200 Iranian fast attack boats swarm a U.S. tanker convoy in the Strait of Hormuz. The battle that follows lasts 4 hours and rewrites the rules of asymmetric naval warfare. October 1st, 2025. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, through which 21 million barrels of oil pass every single day. At 3:30 a.m., 5 American tankers, each carrying liquefied natural gas worth over $80 million, began their transit through these contested waters. Escorting them were 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, the USS Carney and USS Mason, along with a Cyclone-class patrol coastal ship, the USS Firebolt. The convoy represented over $600 million in cargo and strategic energy supplies destined for allied nations in Asia. For the United States Navy, this was a routine freedom of navigation operation. For Iran, it was an opportunity. Intelligence reports had warned of increased Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy activity in the preceding week. Small boat drills, communications intercepts suggesting a major operation, satellite imagery showing dozens of fast attack craft concentrated at bases along the Iranian coast. But the warnings were vague, the threats ambiguous. The U.S. convoy proceeded as planned, maintaining international shipping lanes and adhering to protocols established over decades of strait transits. At 3:47 a.m., radar operators aboard the USS Carney detected the first contacts, small, fast-moving vessels emerging from Iranian coastal waters. Within minutes, the count reached 50, then 100, then 150. By 4 a.m., over 200 Iranian fast attack boats, each carrying between 4 and 12 armed fighters, were racing toward the American convoy at speeds exceeding 40 knots. This was a swarm attack, a tactic the Iranian Revolutionary Guard had perfected over years. Overwhelm sophisticated defenses with sheer numbers, close to point-blank range where advanced weapon systems lose effectiveness, board or damage targets before coordinated responses can form. Each fast attack boat, a fiberglass hull worth perhaps $50,000, carried RPG-7 rocket launchers, DSHK heavy machine guns, and, in some cases, small anti-ship missiles. Individually, they were insignificant. Collectively, they represented a threat capable of crippling billion-dollar warships. The Iranian plan was audacious. Surround the convoy, fire from multiple angles, create chaos, and either seize a tanker or inflict enough damage to close the strait to international shipping. For Tehran, this was a calculated escalation designed to demonstrate that American naval power could be challenged in waters Iran considered its own. At 4:02 a.m., the USS Carney's captain made the call that would define the next 4 hours. General quarters. All hands to battle stations. Weapons free. Rules of engagement authorize deadly force against any vessel demonstrating hostile intent. The message was transmitted across encrypted channels to every American ship in the convoy. Within 90 seconds, the U.S. formation shifted. The 2 destroyers positioned themselves on the flanks, creating overlapping fields of fire. The patrol coastal ship, smaller but heavily armed with .50 caliber machine guns and Mk-19 grenade launchers, moved to protect the rear. The 5 tankers, their civilian crews ordered below decks, accelerated to maximum speed, attempting to clear the kill zone before the swarm arrived. What would you do facing 200 enemy boats with limited ammunition? Type A if you'd engage immediately at maximum range. Type B if you'd hold fire and try to break through. Let the community weigh in below. The Iranian boats closed fast, spreading across a 10-mile front like a net designed to catch everything in its path. At 4:08 a.m., the first shots were fired, not by the Americans, but by the Iranians. RPG-7 rockets, fired from ranges of 1,200 yards, streaked toward the convoy. Most fell short, detonating harmlessly in the water. But 3 struck the lead tanker, the SS Maersk Antares, punching holes in non-critical superstructure and starting small fires. The tanker's crew, trained for exactly this scenario, activated fire suppression systems and continued sailing. The damage was minimal, but the message was clear. Iran was willing to escalate to lethal force. At 4:10 a.m., the USS Carney responded. Her forward 5-inch Mk-45 naval gun opened fire, a weapon capable of firing 20 rounds per minute at targets up to 13 miles away. The first salvo targeted the densest cluster of Iranian boats, 6,000 yards to port. High explosive shells, each weighing 70 pounds, detonated above the water in airburst mode, sending shrapnel ripping through fiberglass hulls and exposed crews. 3 Iranian boats disintegrated in seconds. 4 more were disabled, drifting and burning as survivors abandoned ship. The Carney's crew didn't pause. They reloaded and fired again. And again. Within 5 minutes, the forward gun had expended 80 rounds, destroying or disabling 15 Iranian craft. But the swarm kept coming. For every boat destroyed, 10 more pressed the attack. At 4:14 a.m., Iranian boats closed to within 800 yards, well inside the effective range of their weapons. DSHK heavy machine guns, firing 50 caliber rounds at 600 rounds per minute, raked the convoy. Sparks flew as bullets struck steel hulls. Windows shattered on the tankers. One American sailor aboard the USS Firebolt was wounded by shrapnel, a grazing wound to his shoulder that he continued fighting through. The Firebolt's crew returned fire with their own 50 caliber guns and Mk-19 grenade launchers. The 40mm grenades, exploding among the tightly packed Iranian boats, created devastating casualties. Entire crews were killed instantly. Boats capsized or exploded as fuel tanks ruptured. At 4:20 a.m., the USS Mason joined the fight. Her Phalanx, a 20mm Gatling gun designed to intercept missiles, was repurposed for surface targets. At 4,500 rounds per minute, the weapon created a wall of tungsten that shredded everything in its path. The sound was apocalyptic, a buzzsaw scream that echoed across the water. Iranian boats caught in the Phalanx's field of fire simply ceased to exist, reduced to debris and bodies. But the Phalanx was designed for short-duration engagements. After 90 seconds of continuous fire, the gun's magazine was depleted. Crew members rushed to reload, but the process would take precious minutes the Americans didn't have. Support this channel by subscribing now. The level of detail we provide in these tactical breakdowns is unmatched anywhere else. The Iranian swarm adapted. Recognizing the destroyers as the primary threats, smaller groups of boats began targeting the tankers directly, attempting to get close enough to board. At 4:27 a.m., one group of 6 boats reached the SS Merskentares, grappling hooks flying toward the deck rails. The tanker's crew, armed with fire hoses and flare guns, fought desperately to repel boarders. High-pressure water knocked 2 Iranians overboard. Flares, fired at point-blank range, set one attacker's clothing ablaze. But 3 Iranians managed to climb aboard, armed with AK-47 rifles and seeking to seize control of the bridge. The tanker's captain, a Norwegian merchant marine veteran, barricaded himself in the bridge and transmitted a distress call. Hostile boarders require immediate assistance. The USS Firebolt, 600 yards away, responded instantly. Her crew, unable to fire heavy weapons without risking the tanker, deployed a small boat with a 6-man boarding team. Armed with M4 carbines, tactical shotguns, and flashbang grenades, the Americans stormed the Merskentares at 4:35 a.m. The firefight was close quarters and brutal. 2 Iranians were killed in the initial exchange. The third, cornered in a passageway, surrendered. The American boarding team secured the tanker in under 3 minutes, suffering no casualties. But across the convoy, the battle intensified. At 4:40 a.m., Iranian boats attempted a coordinated attack on the USS Mason. 20 vessels, approaching from 3 directions simultaneously, tried to overwhelm the destroyer's defenses. The Mason's crew, their Phalanx reloaded, engaged with everything they had. The 5-inch gun fired at maximum rate. 50 caliber machine guns blazed from every mount. Small arms fire from sailors on deck added to the chaos. The water around the Mason became a killing field, burning boats, bodies floating, debris and oil slicks spreading for miles. In 7 minutes of sustained combat, the Mason destroyed 18 of the 20 attacking boats. The 2 survivors, their crews dead or wounded, drifted away. But ammunition was becoming critical. The USS Carney had expended over 300 rounds of 5-inch ammunition, more than half her loadout. Machine gun belts were running low. The Phalanx systems, after multiple engagements, were approaching their thermal limits. The convoy was fighting effectively, but sustainability was a growing concern. The Iranian swarm, despite horrific losses, still numbered over 100 boats. And reinforcements were launching from coastal bases, another 50 craft racing to join the battle. The American commander faced a grim calculation: continue engaging and risk running out of ammunition, or break through the swarm and accept casualties. At 4:52 a.m., the decision was made for him. From 80 miles to the northeast, Salvation appeared on radar. 4 Fa-18E Super Hornets, launched from the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group operating in the Gulf of Oman, arrived on station. Each jet carried AGM-114 Hellfire missiles, originally designed for anti-tank use, but devastatingly effective against small boats. At 5 a.m., the Super Hornets began their attack runs. Flying at 400 knots and 500 feet altitude, they unleashed their Hellfires in rapid succession. Each missile, guided by laser designation from the aircraft, struck with precision. Iranian boats exploded in fireballs visible for miles. The psychological impact was immediate. The Iranian swarm, which had pressed attacks despite losses, began to fracture. Boats turned away, fleeing toward coastal waters. The Super Hornets pursued, destroying another 20 vessels before breaking off the engagement. By 5:30 a.m., the battle was effectively over. The remaining Iranian boats, scattered and demoralized, retreated to their bases. The American convoy, battered but intact, continued its transit through the strait. At 6:15 a.m., they entered international waters beyond Iranian reach. The escort destroyers maintained battle stations for another 2 hours, ensuring no follow-up attacks. The 5 tankers, despite damage to the Maersk and Teres, all reached their destinations. Their cargo, $600 million in liquefied natural gas, was delivered on schedule. The Strait of Hormuz remained open. What tactical decision was most critical to the American victory? The destroyer's gunfire, the air support, or the boarding team's action? Drop your analysis below. The cost of the battle was measured in staggering numbers. Iran had launched 200 fast attack boats, carrying approximately 1,200 Revolutionary Guard fighters. Of those boats, 127 were destroyed. Another 38 were damaged so severely they sank or were abandoned. Only 35 returned to base intact. Iranian casualties exceeded 800 dead and 300 wounded, the worst single-day loss for the Revolutionary Guard Navy in its history. The financial cost, while modest compared to conventional warships, still exceeded $8 million in destroyed craft and equipment. But the strategic cost was far higher. Iran had gambled that swarm tactics could overwhelm American defenses. The gamble failed catastrophically. American losses were remarkably light. 1 sailor wounded, non-life-threatening. Minor damage to 2 destroyers, primarily superficial scoring from small arms fire. The SS Maersk and Teres required dockyard repairs estimated at $4 million, but remained seaworthy. Total ammunition expenditure across the convoy exceeded $15 million, including missiles, naval gun rounds, and small arms. But every round had been effective, and the convoy's mission succeeded. The disparity in losses, 800 Iranian dead versus 1 American wounded, told a brutal story. Technology, training, and discipline had triumphed over numerical superiority. The global reaction was swift and largely supportive of the American response. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait, all dependent on Strait of Hormuz shipping, praised the U.S. Navy's actions. European allies expressed solidarity, with the UK deploying additional naval assets to the Gulf. Japan and South Korea, both heavily reliant on Middle Eastern oil, pledged financial support for enhanced Gulf security operations. Even China, normally cautious about commenting on U.S. military actions, acknowledged the importance of maintaining freedom of navigation through critical choke points. Iran's response was defiant but hollow. State media claimed a great victory, asserting that American ships had been forced to flee under fire. Video footage showing burning American vessels that were actually destroyed Iranian boats was broadcast domestically. But international observers, armed with satellite imagery and testimony from neutral merchant ships in the area, debunked the propaganda within hours. The truth that Iran had suffered a devastating defeat could not be suppressed. Within Tehran, recriminations began. The Revolutionary Guard commander who ordered the attack was quietly removed from his position. Several naval officers faced courts-martial for tactical failures. The Iranian regime, already facing economic pressure from sanctions, now confronted the reality that military options against the United States were suicidal. For the United States Navy, the Strait of Hormuz engagement validated decades of investment in surface warfare capabilities and training. The ability to coordinate destroyers, patrol craft, and air support in real time had proven decisive. The effectiveness of naval gunfire against swarm attacks, often questioned in war games, had been demonstrated in combat, and the professionalism of American crews, maintaining fire discipline and executing complex maneuvers under intense pressure, reaffirmed the quality gap between U.S. forces and regional adversaries. But the engagement also revealed vulnerabilities. Ammunition expenditure rates in high-intensity combat were alarming. If the battle had lasted another hour, American ships would have faced critical shortages. The reliance on air support highlighted the need for aircraft carriers to remain in the region, a costly and politically contentious commitment. And the willingness of Iran to accept catastrophic losses suggested future attacks were likely, possibly with more sophisticated weapons. The Strait of Hormuz remained a flashpoint, and October 21st was a reminder that freedom of navigation through this critical waterway would require constant vigilance and the willingness to use deadly force. Economically, the battle's impact rippled through global energy markets. Oil prices, which had spiked 12% when news of the attack broke, stabilized within 24 hours as it became clear the convoy had survived and the strait remained open. Insurance rates for tankers transiting the region increased by 8%, adding costs to global energy supplies, but not enough to disrupt trade. And shipping companies, reassured by the U.S. Navy's decisive response, maintained their Gulf routes rather than seeking expensive alternatives around Africa. For the crews of the USS Carney, USS Mason, and USS Firebolt, the battle became a defining moment. They had faced overwhelming numbers, fought through ammunition constraints, and protected civilian vessels from capture or destruction. Their actions ensured that $600 million in energy supplies reached allied nations. More importantly, they upheld the principle that international waterways remain open to all, regardless of regional threats or intimidation. The sailors returned to port as heroes, their engagement studied in naval academies and cited in defense policy debates. The SS Maersk Antares, her hull scarred by RPG impacts and her superstructure damaged by gunfire, sailed into Singapore 2 weeks later. Her cargo was delivered intact. Her crew received commendations from their company and the Norwegian government, and her story of civilian mariners under fire maintaining their posts and completing their mission became a testament to the courage required to sustain global commerce through dangerous waters. As the sun rose on October 22nd, the Strait of Hormuz was quiet. Debris fields marked where battles had been fought. Iranian coastal communities mourned their dead. American warships refueled and rearmed, preparing for the next convoy. And across the Gulf, military planners on both sides absorbed the lessons. For Iran, the lesson was humbling. Swarm tactics, while intimidating, could not overcome technological superiority backed by disciplined execution. For the United States, the lesson was sobering. The Strait of Hormuz would remain contested, and future transits would require the same commitment of resources, the same willingness to fight, and the same acceptance that freedom of navigation is defended through strength, not negotiation. The battle lasted 4 hours. Its consequences will shape Gulf security for decades. 200 Iranian boats attacked. 35 returned. And the world was reminded that some waterways, narrow and contested though they may be, remain open because nations are willing to defend them. The Strait of Hormuz remembers October 21, 2025. It remembers a swarm broken by steel and fire, and it stands as proof that intimidation, no matter how numerous or bold, cannot close waters that free nations refuse to surrender. Now, I need your perspective. First, should the U.S. Navy have allowed civilian tankers to transit during heightened tensions? Or was the risk too great? Second, was the Iranian Revolutionary Guard swarm tactic fundamentally flawed? Or could it work under different circumstances? Third, how should the international community respond to nations that attempt to close critical shipping lanes? Share your answers in the comments. Your insights drive the conversations we have on this channel. And if this 4-hour battle kept you engaged from start to finish, prove it by smashing that like button, subscribing, and hitting notifications so you never miss our next tactical breakdown. Until next time, stay sharp, stay informed, and remember that the freedom to trade across oceans is defended by those willing to fight for it.